So hey guys, welcome to the new show, the Dynamic Duo. I'm Franz.
I'm Kevin.
Kevin, welcome to the show. I
Thank you,
think today we
Franz.
got a great. Thank you. I think today we got a great topic to talk about because I think it encompasses a lot of different subjects, and that topic is, as you chose, what villain, right, would you choose for the next movie? And it's a complicated question because there are a lot of movies, right? So there are a lot of villains to consider. And are we talking about the next movies, or are we talking about how would you have done it in the past? So what's your thought?
A little bit of both. Personally, if indeed they do get another Henry Cavill Superman off the line, or even if they do it with someone else, I would go with Mr. Mixelplit.
Really?
Yes.
That's an interesting choice.
Part of the reason why is because the films up to this point have been heavy-handed, at least in the contemporary sense of what's been restarted with Superman. And based on his history, he has issues against magic and spells and that kind of thing. I think it would be an absolute hoot for the audience to, one, lighten material up, and along the line of what I was saying the other day, not necessarily, of course, killing Mixie, but at the end of it, at least allowing Superman to vanquish him and get rid of him for the time being, but at the same time, kind of having Mixie let him know, I'll be back, and you move from there.
That's an interesting choice. That's that's an interesting choice. Let me ask you this: two questions.
Go ahead.
Which Mixoplex would you choose? Is it the silly sort of gnome one, like the little whatever one? And how would you handle that movie? Would it be comedic? Because Mixoplex is a strange and almost quirky character, and his powers are like tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're thinking in terms of that. That wouldn't have been my choice.
Honestly, I would stay with the Impish version to a point. I don't know if you've ever watched the Superman animated series episodes that featured Mixie when Gilbert Gottfried was doing his voice. I personally, not that I would get Gottfried to do it, but in a lot of ways, I thought Gottfried nailed Mixelplex more than anybody that's ever done it. Because his characterization was more of a, okay, I'm a pain in the butt, I know I am, but I'm having fun. And again, that's one of the reasons why I would lighten it up instead of constantly going through these dark edges that they keep giving the character. Not that, or any of them for that matter, not that I'm against material being dark, but as we discussed before, I think there's the studios and the production offices are slipping into something that they may not be able to get out of over a period of time. And it basically, I would fix it or arrange it so that even if he didn't show up on his own, to kind of make it a double problem, I'd team him up with the Toy Man.
Interesting.
And let the two of them try to take Kal-El down as far as that part of it's concerned. I just would lighten things up a bit. Especially since, with the exception of Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, Cavill hasn't had a movie on his own. And they are saying that we're going to get another one, but I just think they need to lighten it up a little bit.
That's as I said, it's an interesting choice. It isn't where I would personally go. And I've seen, of course, the animated series, and I can't recall exactly how Mixoplex was handled, but it does bring up the subject for me because for me, the animated series just nails it. when you look at the Batman animated series, when you look at just Justice League, when you look at Superman, to me, that nails it. And so, as I barely recall, I'm sure they handled that character, which is kind of an extreme, quirky type of character. I'm sure they've handled them very, very well. My dream situation would be for the animated series to just literally turn into a live action, and that presentation to be turned into a live action.
Franz, I love you for saying that.
No, but
I have felt that for years. Thank you so much for saying that.
It's a weird thing that more of us are not demanding that. It's that inherent shame that so many fans have within themselves. We love the comic books, right? We love the animated series, and yet we still feel like, oh, we need to apologize, and we need to darken, and we need to legitimize, and we don't. The stuff, that material is really solid and good enough and mature enough and intelligent enough and deep enough for it to be transferred into the live action version of it. And so, yes, I agree with that choice. Now, having said that, even within the animated series, if I was going to choose my favorite episode, or if I was going to choose my favorite villain, it wouldn't be the Mxyzptlk, episode. It would be the traditional, some of the episodes of him going up against Darkseid or Brainiac or things like that. I think the actions, one of the things that I'm looking for in a superhero movie is not just the action, but the maximization of that superhero's abilities. Yes. Pushing that hero to the limit. That's why I told you on the previous show that I love Spider-Man 2, because they pushed Spider-Man to his full capacity. When you watch that action sequence, there's nothing missing. He's going all out, and he's in command of that action. That's what I'd like to see. Like, for example, when I look at the animated series where Superman goes up against Shazam, that's just geekasm for me. I just love that. When he goes up against Darkseid, one of my favorite movies is, oh gosh, I do this all the time. I draw a blank. Maybe you can help me. The Superman series where it was a one-off animated movie, not the animated series. Where he goes up against that Britain.
Batman, Superman, Apocalypse.
No, that was a good one. No, I'm talking about the one when he goes up against the British team, the new breed of superheroes.
The Elite, Superman versus the Elite.
Yes, Superman versus the Elite. Thank you. I just draw a blank. But yeah, that series to me, where Superman just becomes Superman, I like those kinds of things, and so that would be more so my choice for the Superman option of it. Now, are you just thinking Superman, or what other villains do you envision for the other characters?
Well, honestly, and let me clarify, for me, the Riddler has always been one of my favorite characters, if not the favorite. And especially, of course, within Batman's universe. And part of the reason why, without geeking out too far, is because A, getting into the comics as a kid, B, watching Frank Gorshin as a kid on TV, I honestly thought that out of everyone on that show, including Cesar Romero and some of the others, he absolutely nailed the Riddler literally with his eyes closed. And although I understand a lot of what the interpretations have been for the character over the years and what have you, I would love an actual interpretation of the Riddler, not where he's psychotic or anything along that line, but the puzzle master and the narcissist that the Riddler is. Because I absolutely love the fact that within the character structure, in a lot of ways, although he wants to get rid of the dynamic duo, hint, hint, is that his whole thing is to outwit Batman.
Yeah.
And when Robin is there, of course, him as well. It's not necessarily I have to kill you, but it's a matter of I need to make you look bad. And in a lot of the interpretations that they've done, with the exception of, again, and you've already said it, the animated series, which I thought John Glover's portrayal of the character was absolutely brilliant. I thought he nailed him from beginning to end. Um, and I would love to see that on screen. I know that Matt Reeves is bringing the Riddler into the Batman, but at least by appearances right now, it looks as though they have done the Riddler again as a form of a psychotic character.
Correct, correct.
The biggest difference between the Riddler and the Joker is that the Joker was the one that was psychotic. And as I stated a couple of seconds ago, the Riddler is the one that's the narcissist.
Interesting.
The whole idea of catch me if you can, I dare you, just it makes me go crazy or have a fangasm or whatever however because I love the idea that Batman has to figure out what he's doing, why, and on down the line. It's not as simple as the Joker or some of the other villains he deals with, because a lot of the stuff with the Joker, even though it's twisted, the Joker comes straight ahead of, I'll kill the entire world. That's not the Riddler. And I love that from a storytelling point of view.
Interesting. Interesting. And I think I'm getting a better idea of your choices in terms of what your expectation of movies are. And that's something that we'll talk about eventually too. Like, what would you like to see in a movie? Like, what is your ideal superhero movie like?
Are you speaking from a villain point of view or in general?
Well, what I mean is that if you were in charge, if you were, talk about geekgasm, right, or fangasm. What movie would you see? Have you seen that movie, a superhero movie? And B, if you haven't seen it, what movie would you like to see that would just blow your mind? Like, what are you looking for in a movie that would blow your mind? In a superhero movie?
Honestly, this is probably going to freak you out a little bit. I would love to see the classic Superman versus Spider-Man adapted for the big screen.
Ooh,
just do it. Have Marvel and DC stop fighting with one another and stop competing in the sense of what they are currently doing and simply make the movie. Don't make a whole lot of changes unless they're absolutely necessary. And I mean absolute. Take the book, look at it, do it. You've already got Doc Ock. You already have Luthor. All you need to do, you even have the two female leads within Mary Jane and Lois Lane kind of being in the same environment. Simply adapt that book. I guarantee you, if you leave it alone, if you start making changes, you'll lose the audience. But if you leave it alone and simply say, that's what I want to see, it would be unstoppable.
Well, the recurring theme, I think, of this show is going to be the closer you stick to the source material, the better the material and the more successful you will be. Having said that, let me tell you what my choice would be. And I want to answer the original question, too, as to what villains would I like to see next in the movies. But for me, here's what I'd like to see. What I'd love to see is an interpretation of the original material, of the classic stuff that has worked in the past, that we all know, and that we all love, that we would all love to see translated into a live action movie. I want to see the Dark Phoenix saga, for example, but I want to see it as told in the original comic books. Yes, of course, there's going to be changes. Yes, of course, there are going to be nuances. Yes, of course, it's not going to be an exact literal interpretation, but I want to see that story the same way, for example, The Walking Dead gives me the story within the comic book. I want to see that story. I want to see that development of a character. I want to see Spider-Man. I want to see Spider-Man's story of Gwen's death. I want to see the development of Gwen Stacy and the development of Green Goblin and seeing that come to life and having Gwen die. Yes, we've had versions of that, but never the story, never the thing. I want to see that. I want to see the Avengers versus the Skrulls. I want to see those types of interpretation. the way that I would see it is that the comic books have been sort of a testing ground, right? The ultimate testing ground of material. And throughout the years, they have produced certain things that we have known have been classic, successful stuff. If you take that classic, successful stuff and you bring it to the audience and you give it to them, the same way the fans reacted to the comic books, to the original material, is the same way the general public will react to the original material. And it would also please the fans, because nothing would please us more than to see, you know, Wolverine go up against the Hulk, or something that's touched us in the comic book. So that's, to me, that's my vision. That's what I would like. And let me emphasize one thing about that interpretation. I want it pure. I want it unapologetic. What I mean by that is, give me Captain America's costume. Give me Spider-Man's costume. Give me Thor's costume. There's so many classic, awesome Thor stories. You can have Thor going up against Mangog. If you don't know, and I'm talking to you guys watching this, go back and read the original Stan Lee Kirby. Don't presume that it's cheesy or campy or silly or stupid. Go back and give it a chance and read the original Stan Lee Kirby. Yes, there are limitations to the art. Yes, there are limitations to the format, but read it for the heart of it, and read the story where Thor goes up against Mangog. Read those stories. Read Fantastic Four going into the negative zone, and the action sequences that Jack Kirby put on those pages, translated into the action movies. My friend, I'm telling you, it would just blow us away. And so that's what my Geekgasm movie would be, an unapologetic interpretation of the original material. That's what I'd like to see.
I'm inclined to agree with you. That's why I said, when I was talking about Superman versus Spider-Man, just do it. Just do it. And it's not an impossibility by any stretch. Because if it were, we would have never gotten the book in the 70s when it was done.
Exactly.
Marvel and DC would have never come together to say, we need to go ahead and do this. It would have never happened. So whatever roadblocks are preventing them from kind of working together, and I'm not saying that that everything else that has ever been done would have to be a team up, but work together, for goodness sakes.
And second of all, I should say, you know, the whole idea of the Marvel versus DC, the fandom, to me, come on, guys, you know, cut it out. These are superhero movies. Either we love the genre or we don't.
We don't.
And as a Marvel guy, I'm a 1,000% a Marvel guy, even though I do love the DC characters. Nothing would please me more than to see Superman done well. Nothing would please me more than to see Superman with Spider-Man. Who cares? As long as the movies are good. What's happening is that we tend to be, because of the rivalry, we hate. You know, there are haters out there. And they hate just for the sake of hating, because they don't want DC to do better than Marvel, and vice versa.
Right.
Just enjoy the movies for what they are and give them a chance to be viewed and valued for their worth. You know what I mean?
I agree with you completely. It's and going back to the original question for today, or topic rather, concerning the villains.
Correct.
I seriously want, and it's not that I'm droning on DC, but I want them to stop depicting the Penguin as a grotesque monster. I would pay them myself to stop. That actually came about when Tim Burton, and this is not an exaggeration, was putting together Batman Returns.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw an interview. I don't know if you ever remember the late night talk show thing that Bob Costas used to do later.
I do remember that.
Okay. He interviewed Burton and most of the cast of the show for an entire week before Batman Returns hit theaters. And when Costas was asking him about various things and what have you, Burton brought up the fact that he hated the Penguin because Burgess Meredith was never a threat to Batman. And in the comics, he felt, for those that he had read, he felt that it was that the Penguin himself was never a threat. So he decided, if I turn him into a monster, I make him grotesque, I make him, you know, just a nasty person, that'll work for me and it'll work for my audience. He missed the point. The Penguin, almost along the line of what I was saying about the Riddler earlier, the Penguin, and I'm not saying you can't reinterpret the characters, but the Penguin had always been a gentleman bandit that was involved with organized crime and doing things that created problems for Gotham, the police force, and the good guys. He was never a grotesque character. The whole Penguin thing came from him being rotund and small in stature and what have you, and people calling him the Penguin and having the extended nose. And in my opinion, ever since Burton reimagined the character through Danny DeVito and for that movie as this nasty, grotesque, monster-like character, almost every other interpretation we've gotten has been that. And
Yeah.
I think Hollywood is slipping a little bit because of that. They are moving so far into these dark worlds that they're losing sight of what should be done along the line of what you said about sticking to the source material and continuing forward from there.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you mean Hollywood, or do you mean DC, or do you mean specific movies? Because to be fair, you know, you've got, do you consider the Avengers to fit in that category? Do you consider Guardians of the Galaxy? Do you consider, some of the Spider-Man movies, Iron Man, and so on and so forth? Do you consider that to be in that, in what you're talking about, or is it more specific movies?
Honestly, it's specific movies and specific characters within, and this is going to make it sound like I'm picking on DC, but I'm not, more toward what DC is doing with their characters. Marvel has basically nailed most of what they needed to do. And part of that is they have gone, even though they've made changes, they have gone back to the source material. They went back to the stuff that made the characters the characters. It helps that Sam Raimi for Spider-Man, if he's telling the truth, is a huge Spider-Man fanatic.
That's right.
He's a fan at heart. So he wasn't going to damage that.
That's right.
And the same thing goes for a lot of the other people, production-wise or even acting-wise, that are part of the Marvel Universe. I think that's the difference that sets them apart. A lot of the people, with maybe the exception of Patty Jenkins, because she has admitted she's a huge Wonder Woman nut, okay? And most of them really don't have any personal connection to what they're dealing with. It's almost like we've got so-and-so signed up for a Batman movie. We've got so-and-so signed up for a Superman movie or a Green Lantern project. And they're not tied to it from a passionate point of view. And that's what helps.
Correct.
Helps. Most of the actors that they have tied to the Marvel material, they're crazy about what they're doing. About a month ago, Chris Hemsworth let the world know that outside of Thor: Love and Thunder, he will be doing one more solo movie, at least as long as the world kind of goes back to normal and the pandemic passes to whatever degree. Sure. He wants to play the character again, and he wants to do it on his own. I have nothing against what Natalie Portman is about to do for Love and Thunder, but at the same time, I'm not so sure that this is the right way to go after what they did with Endgame.
No, it's the wrong way to go, in my opinion. Uh, and we're switching the subjects again, and this is a subject that's worthy of its own show, essentially. But very briefly, you're emulating something that wasn't a success. To me, that's a mistake. The Jane Foster becoming Thor character is not a successful comic book series. It's not well accepted, and it's not well loved. It's not, it's not classic. It's not, so why would you emulate that? Particularly given that there's so many great Thor stories that could be done that have not been done, whether it's Simonson or whether it's Kirby, whether it's Pollard, you name it. So it's a risk, and it's a topic worth its own thing. I had a question that I was going to ask you with respect to what you were saying earlier. For me, it's an interesting thing. When I look at Marvel movies and I look at DC movies, the way that I interpret it is that some movies I absolutely love from Marvel. Iron Man to me is just perfect. I love Doctor Strange. That was really, really well done. Certainly the Avengers movies are excellent. I do not like Endgame. In fact, I kind of hate Endgame. I think it's a horrible movie. We could talk about that later. But at the same time, I also enjoy the DC movies. And the DC movies give me, I agree with you that Zack goes dark. And I agree with you that it's inappropriate, particularly given that he's really helmed Superman as a character. And I agree with you that I would love to have seen two changes in Zack Snyder's Superman movie. First, the tone of the movie, the contrast of the movie should be lighter. And certainly the action sequences at the end when he was fighting Zod should have been a little bit less fast and less confusing. I definitely agree with those two things. The other thing that I would add is just give me Superman. Don't reinterpret Superman to such an extent that I don't recognize the character. Don't change his origin. Don't do that. It's like, why, dude? Like, why do you do that? If you don't like it, just ignore it. But anyway, so those are the three things that detract from my enjoyment of Superman as a whole. But what I get from the DC movies is that delivery of action, of superheroic action, that just hits my fan geekasm. I just love that depiction. I love, for example, to give you a quick comparison, the Wonder Woman war scene when she's fighting in World War I, whatever it was. That depiction of that heroic depiction of her holding the shield, and I would have died to see Captain America in such a beautifully displayed way, as opposed to how he was delivered in First Avengers, which I did not enjoy at all. Not a bad movie, but far from what I wanted and what I expected. And so the ultimate movie is a combination of both, in my opinion. And that's where I am.
I got you.
That's where I am.
I mean, one of the interesting things that I have observed over the years is that even though DC has kind of faltered at different points for their movies, they have nailed most of their television shows. And in the earlier days when Marvel was trying to do TV, with the exception of maybe the Hulk, they messed up most of their TV shows. It's an interesting switch, so to speak, because as I'm saying, DC got it right for most of their TV. Marvel has gotten it right for the movies. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Forgive me for cutting you off, but I was going to say, as we agreed, the pinnacle is the animated series. The pinnacle to me is the animated series. And that's where you are. And I think DC has done a fantastic job with it. Marvel has done some fantastic job as well. Avengers Assemble to me is great.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, that's a great series. The Panther's Quest series of that was awesome. So that's, that to me, that's the pinnacle of it all. That's the pinnacle of it all. Because it's unapologetic, it's superheroic, it's deep, it's interesting, it's mature, it's everything that you need. It's entertaining, it's enjoyment. And this idea that we need to, I agree with you again, to darken everything and to maturize everything is not necessarily the way to go, you know?
I have a question for you.
Go.
In terms of animated shows,
Go.
what would you do next?
In terms of animated shows?
Uh-huh.
Wow, that's an interesting question. So there's so many places to go. I go back to the same thing. I'd love to see a series that retells the comic Spider-Man, retells it. I'd love to go to a series that retells the Thor Spider-Man. And I'm talking from issue 1 on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this generation of audience, of people, don't get how special those characters were. They don't get that what they're getting is a residue of what was created. And they're missing that purity, that golden purity. And I would love for them to experience that. Because none of us are going back to read Stan Lee and Steve Ditko or John Romita. We're not doing that because we just think too badly of them. We're not going back to read Kirby and Fantastic Four. We're not doing that. Even myself as an adult, it wasn't until much later in my life that I was so disgusted by what was happening in the modernization of current comic books, that I said, you know what, let me go back to my roots, that I started rereading those books, that I discovered how absolutely brilliant they were. So to answer your question, that's what I would want. And I'd want it it would be great to do that on an animated series where you're just basically retelling the issues one after another with all the cliffhangers.
And that's a fantastic answer, because what I would do, and I know that Disney Plus and Marvel are working on, the What If series for what they're doing. But to take a cue from you, I would love it if an entire series was nothing more than the classic material redone.
Yeah.
Just redo it.
And let me tell you something too, and this is an actually true story. That's been done. The original Fantastic Four cartoons were that. They were the literal interpretation of the comic books. And let me tell you something. So as I just said, I rediscovered recently, not too long ago, how special those comic books were. Well, prior to doing that, I was watching that old animated cartoon Fantastic Four.
I love those.
Oh, listen. So let me tell you. So, but obviously it's older. It's an older version. So the cartoon is not as sophisticated as it is today. It's not as pretty. It's not as whatever. But I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm just getting a kick out of it. I didn't realize at the time that it was an interpretation of the comic book. I really didn't. And I'm just enjoying it. I'm like, wow, these are great. This is great. And then I found out why it was great. So imagine that being done with today's technology of cartoon, of animated series production. To me, that would just be a home run all the way. It'd be a home run all the way.
To let you in on a little bit of a thing, I've been trying to figure out a way of setting up a petition to get those original Marvel cartoons released. All of them.
What do you mean?
To get them released on disc. Or at least to have them flipped over to Disney Plus and let them run them.
But they're all available. They're on Disney Plus. Which cartoon do you mean?
I'm talking about the ones from the 60s.
They're on Disney Plus. I watched the Fantastic Four series on Disney Plus. They have the original Spider-Man. They have that on Disney Plus.
That one I know, but I didn't know that the Fantastic Four was on there.
I'm pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure it is. In fact, I rewatched it again.
I'll have to go and look. Because I would love it if, and this is along the line of getting back to the original subject, the source material, I want to see Thor versus Hercules.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Listen, there was magic, man. There was magic in those pages. If you look at Captain America, there are series in Captain America that just blow your mind. If you look at Thor, there are so many. Thor versus Hercules, Thor versus Mangog, Thor versus Crusher Creel. I mean, there's a scene in the comic book that it just blows me away when Thor goes away. He announces his love to Jane Foster and he tells her who he is, and he vows to stay with her.
Right.
But he's called back to Asgard because Asgard has a war. So he leaves because he has to. Right. And he comes back and Jane Foster is all mad at him. And to make him jealous, she starts flirting with Hercules. And Thor just loses his mind.
I remember those books.
He loses his mind and he's just out of jealousy is fighting Hercules. That's great stuff to me.
I remember those. That's why I want to see it.
Exactly.
That's exactly why I want to see it.
But listen, we are running out of time. Forgive me. I'm sorry to cut you off. I apologize.
No,
we are running out of time, so we're going to do the closing thoughts. You know, we're going to leave it up to people. If they're enjoying this conversation and if they want to join in with comments and they want it to go longer, maybe we could extend this further. You know, as it is, I think we're pushing the envelope at 30 minutes. As it is, because people have a short attention span, but and maybe we could break it up into different series as well. But unfortunately, we do have to end the show. So let me have your closing and parting thoughts on the topic of the day, which is the next villains that you'd like to see.
In closing, as I stated earlier, and I don't want to just repeat myself, but I want the Riddler. I want the classic Riddler. I feel that he'd be perfect for a Batman setup, and at the same time, as I've stated before, bring in Robin, and let the story play out. Take one of the episodes of the animated series, as we stated earlier. Do it.
Now let me ask you, and I hope we don't get cut off, but you know that when you say Riddler, immediately in people's mind, they're thinking 1960s Riddler. Is that the Riddler do you mean when you say classic Riddler?
What I mean is the classic interpretation of the puzzle Riddler and the narcissistic Riddler.
Gotcha.
Leave the psychotic version out of it.
I gotcha. I wanted you to clarify that, because I think most people will automatically go there in their minds and they'll automatically kind of reject that proposal. So I'm glad you clarified that. I think it's a tough question for me. There's a million villain characters that I would love to see, but I think if I had to choose one, give me the Dark Phoenix saga and give him to me in full glory, full costume, shy air. Give it to me. Give it to me unapologetically. That's what I would go with.
I got you.
All right, my friend, another great show. Always fun to talk to you.
Always.
We need to start hitting some of the current topics. So let's do some research and find out what's being talked about, and let's give our opinions on what's happening with Wonder Woman, what's happening with the Zack Snyder cut, what's happening with the Ray Fisher and the controversies. Let's hit some of those topics so that
we'll do.
All right, my friend. Great
show.
Alrighty,
take care now.
I'll talk to you later.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.